Okay, I think we're live.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à notre session en direct. D'habitude, vous nous voyez les lundis matin à 10h, ben, vous me voyez pour la session de prendre soin de soi. So usually you see this is a placeholder for self-care live. However, we are straight in Adoption Awareness Month. And we have put together each week some themes and a lot of information for you. And we decided to take this time on the Monday morning, 10 a.m. live to start off the week with the theme this week. Donc, on voulait vraiment prendre la chance on voulait prendre cette opportunité à 10h le matin d'embarquer en direct puis vraiment se lancer dans c'est quoi le sujet pour cette semaine. Donc, j'ai Suzanne qui me joint ce matin. Good morning, Suzanne.
Good morning.
You've been working hard on this theme for this week, which is?
Trauma-informed parenting.
Oui, donc la parentalité adaptée aux traumatismes. Fait qu'on va vraiment discuter puis parler de ça ce matin. Puis, tout au long de la semaine, vous allez avoir des lives, des panels, un webinaire, tout par rapport à le trauma, la parentalité adaptée au traumatisme. So I was just saying, Suzanne, that there'll be lots this week. So you're going to give us a little breakdown of that a little later. But first, let's just maybe introduce ourselves. And for people who don't know us, because we are live on the main Foundations page. So just keep a little note that this page is public. So whatever comments that will be on this live is public.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Brandi. So I'm Suzanne King. For people who don't know me already, I'm Suzanne Kingston. I'm the executive director of the foundation, and I'm part of this team with Brandi and a few others that really pulled a lot. We worked together, and then for Adoption Month, we pulled together a whole bunch of resources to help people who are thinking of adopting, help people who have adopted, as well as child welfare professionals, and also really anyone who cares about children and youth.
Absolument. So, donc, c'est Suzanne qui est notre directrice générale de la Fondation. Puis, c'est ça qu'elle nous disait qu'on a vraiment mis en place avec prendre conscience pour le mois d'adoption, beaucoup de sujets pour vraiment aider les gens à plus comprendre le processus d'adoption. Si vous voulez adopter, on supporte aussi les parents qui ont adopté. On travaille aussi avec les professionnels qui travaillent avec les enfants et n'importe qui ont juste vraiment de l'intérêt à en savoir plus les enfants pris sous la charge du gouvernement. Ouais.
So we wanted to, we were thinking about this morning, part of why we picked this time, as Brandi was explaining, is self-care. And because this week is trauma-informed care, a very, very important part of that, the fundamental of having a trauma-informed approach with children and really anyone in your life, is understanding your own wellness and finding ways to be well yourself. So it was important to have that angle. It is the time we'll introduce our topics for each week, but it is also the self-care time. So we did want to underscore that as an important part of this week. When we pulled together Adoption Month, we had to kind of pick. There's so many things to talk about. Anyone who knows anything about adoption it's extremely complicated, and there's lots of things and lots of angles on it. So last week we talked about the adoption process and just adoption in general, adoption awareness, why it's so important. This week we chose trauma-informed care, or trauma-informed parenting. Next week we're going to talk about self-care, and then the week after that, diversity and adoption. But we thought for today we wanted to really dig down why is trauma-informed care so important in adoption, and fundamentally it's important because kids who've been adopted, kids who've gone through care, kids who've had very traumatic, early childhood experiences have been traumatized. And so, it's not always obvious, but almost all of us have had some trauma in our lives. The kids that generally are being parented in adoptive homes who've been in care and also need to be adopted, have had very significant trauma. So their reactions to things, behaviors are tied into that original trauma, those experiences of trauma. So it's important to understand how that early childhood trauma then affects their behavior now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does impact the whole family, really, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to repeat that quickly in French. Suzanne nous laisse savoir que quand on a vraiment discuté comme dans notre team ici, de voir qu'est-ce qu'on voulait vous offrir pour le mois de sensibilisation à l'adoption. Il y a tellement de sujets qui viennent à l'idée, puis on aurait pu vous partager tellement de choses, mais on a choisi les sujets vraiment qu'on voulait toucher ce mois-ci, qu'on trouve pour tout de suite les plus importants. Sont tous importants, sauf que c'est vraiment des choses qu'on voulait vous offrir pour vous ouvrir les horizons. Puis la semaine passée, on avait vraiment le processus de l'adoption. Cette semaine, c'est le trauma que les enfants vivent, puis on veut vraiment rentrer là-dedans. On a tous expérimenté une partie de trauma probablement dans nos vies, mais les enfants sous les soins ont en particulièrement vécu quelque chose quand même d'assez important. Puis c'est de reconnaître ça, puis de voir dans la façon qu'on est parent à ces enfants-là, puis quel impact que ça a sur notre cheminement dans l'adoption, puis dans nos familles en particulier. Puis on embarque le sujet de self-care, le sujet de prendre soin de nous là-dedans, parce que c'est quand même, comme on dit, ça va main dans la main. Puis la semaine prochaine, on va aller plus en détail sur prendre soin de soi, les façons de vraiment prendre soin de soi comme parent. Puis la semaine d'après, c'est sur la diversité dans l'adoption.
And so we as a team, as we work with families and, and also, most of our staff are adoptive parents who adopted kids who've been in care. So we have our awareness of this dynamic within, for how kids who've been traumatized, that when you look at, even if the behavior is exactly the same as a child who's not been in care or not, always had the same, family, the roots of that behavior are very different. So understanding, it's less about the behavior, because certainly sometimes behaviors are way, off the rails, and it's, it can be very, very difficult. Yeah. It really, one of the fundamental ideas of trauma-informed care is looking beyond the behavior. Mm-hmm. So what is the need underneath that behavior? And then also a big part of why we really felt motivated to focus on this topic was that if you love someone who has had significant trauma in their life, you are then impacted by it. And the secondary trauma is very, very common. And so that knowing that the dynamic that your child is going through is then affecting you and your own wellness, and how that then can really spiral. And it can be so difficult. And certainly talking with other people who've been through it is a big part of what we do. And that, I think, is just being validated in your experience is fundamental. The other thing is that we're hoping we're going to bring this week is some tools around what are some approaches around trauma-informed parenting that can really help. So we're going to be having, as Brandi mentioned in French, we'll be having a webinar tomorrow night, and there's still spots available. Go on our website. We're going to have a panel of parents who have adopted kids who are actually applying all of these strategies, because we can talk about theory, but how do you actually do that in real life, and how do you sometimes you try it and it doesn't work, and then you got to figure out a new way to do it, and reality is reality. So we can talk about the great, beautiful strategy, but what we're going to have is some parents who are actually committed to applying it and see how it works for them. And then we're going to have a support group on Thursday night, so people are welcome. And if you're pre-adoptive, you're totally welcome to be part of that. If you're post-adopted, post-adoption, come to that as well. So one of the things that we want to sort of the why, to just going back to the why are we doing this, is the importance of, like, all of this comes out of brain research, and recognizing we now know so much more about our brains, and that our brains are wired for relationships. Like, that's why, as human beings, as babies, we're wired to be, connect with others. When you've had significant trauma in your life, the wiring is more focused on protection. So that then ends up affecting how you relate and how you experience life. And so your reactions to stressors in life will be different. So it's, a lot of this is sort of based on the science behind all of this, and then applying those strategies. And what's really amazing about this too is that even though, it's not going to work like that, and kids aren't going to get completely better just like that, it is a strategy. When you talk to people who use it, it does work, and it does bring the temperature down. It does, as you become calmer in your reaction to kids who are traumatized, they become calmer. Mm-hmm. And then the behaviors may still happen, but people's responses to those behaviors change. And it is, there's hope for some healing from the trauma through this approach.
Absolument. Je vais juste répéter vite fait le fait que pourquoi qu'on a choisi ce thème ici, puis pourquoi qu'on trouve c'est tellement important de regarder à la relation qui se passe avec les enfants qui ont vécu des traumas, puis vraiment aller regarder à comment les enfants réagissent, puis peut-être qu'ils réagissent pareil, peut-être ce qu'ils font, c'est pareil comme qu'un autre enfant dans une autre famille, soit sa famille biologique ou pas, sauf qu'on réalise, puis que Suzanne nous dit que la science nous démontre que la partie du cerveau est changée, puis elle est plus vers la protection. Puis les enfants réagissent pour se protéger. Puis c'est d'aller, elle dit beyond the behavior, c'est vraiment aller au-delà de ce qui se passe vraiment, puis de réaliser que la façon qu'on réagit, nous comme parents, ça a un effet fondamental dans la façon que votre enfant va... ça ne veut pas dire que ça ne sera plus là ou que ça change comme ça, sauf qu'on réalise qu'il y a des stratégies qui sont mises en place, qu'on peut mettre en place, puis qu'on peut pratiquer, puis qu'on peut vraiment rentrer dedans, puis voir avec la consistance de voir des changements. Puis on va avoir un panel de parents qui va discuter de ça parce que c'est bien beau d'avoir des stratégies puis des façons d'implémenter dans nos familles pour pouvoir aider les enfants à je manque le mot pour healing, les aider à passer au travers. Sauf que d'entendre des parents qui ont vraiment implémenté ces stratégies-là va vous donner peut-être ce que vous avez besoin de voir que ça peut vraiment fonctionner. Donc, on va avoir ça jeudi. Il va y avoir un webinaire aussi. On va tout vous montrer ça. Il y a tout ça sur le site web, mais on a aussi un webinaire qui est très, très intéressant. Il y a encore des places. Fait si vous voulez nous joindre, allez mettre votre courriel, puis vous pouvez nous joindre avec ça. Aider les enfants à guérir. Oui, merci, Patricia. C'est tout le temps le changement de langage. Donc, on a ça. Ça fait qu'on a plusieurs choses pour vous cette semaine pour vous informer encore plus sur le trauma. Yeah. All right, back to you.
Okay.
And just to mention for the French people that are watching us, pour les gens en français qui nous regardent, envoyez-nous vos messages, vos questions, on vous répondra. Si jamais il y a quelque chose qu'on a sauté, if ever we jumped on something that you're wondering about, just contact us. We are 3 people in the New Brunswick Adoption Support Network that speak French, so we're definitely there to answer your questions.
Right. And tomorrow night's webinar will be in English, but we will be offering it in French early in the new year.
Oui, c'est ça. Donc, demain, le webinaire est en anglais, sauf qu'il va être offert en français en janvier.
Yeah. And what we've done too, I can just show people quickly, we've set up, like we're having things this week that we've just listed that we're doing, but along, like in the background of all of that is we created these web pages, thanks to our Patricia Estabrooks, who's an amazing guru when it comes to IT. We have these websites set up with lists of resources related to that topic. So I'm just going to quickly click on that. Just give me a sec here to share that.
OK, puis notre website est en français aussi, donc notre site web est en français.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the French version of this page. So there's all these resources there. You can see, and there's also an English page that's very similar. So we tried as much as possible to get as many French resources on there and English resources. So so go to our website along with participate in our different activities this week. Because you can then, like, there's just it's an iceberg of information.
Oui, ça fait qu'à partir du site web, il y a plein de ressources. Donc, puis si vous avez des ressources d'extra ou quelque chose que vous voulez partager, on peut l'ajouter sur le site web. Ça fait envoyez-nous ça si vous avez quelque chose que vous avez trouvé qui est vraiment intéressant.
And that's oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
nbadoption.ca. So that's there. Okay, so one of the things that so fundamental to all this is like how when you're interacting with somebody who is having a trauma reaction, it's really important for you to, as much as you can, be regulated, right? So when our kids are, reacting in a way that's extreme because they've had trauma, our response, the tricky part of it is, we react, we're then triggered, and then it's just adding fuel to the fire. Yeah. The whole idea of this approach is to find ways to calm yourself. So do you want to just repeat that?
Oui, donc beaucoup de l'approche qu'on veut parler de cette semaine puis aujourd'hui, un peu, c'est par rapport à quand on est en interaction avec un enfant qui a eu des sévères traumatismes ou moins sévères, mais qui a un traumatisme, c'est vraiment important de regarder comment nous, comme parents, on réagit, puis de peut-être pas être en réaction, mais d'être en réponse. C'est vraiment difficile, c'est pas tout le temps facile parce que nous aussi, on est je sais pas c'est quoi le mot triggered en français, mais nous aussi, nos besoins sont, en tout cas, c'est triggered, là. Puis, c'est ça, c'est de vraiment regarder, fait qu'on va discuter un peu de ça ce matin, puis tout au long de la semaine.
So what we as we were preparing for this week, we came across this fantastic video that's really for organizations around how do you approach things in a trauma-informed way, but it relates to parenting too. I mean, all good parenting strategies are about human relationships, and all good, communication strategies are really about human relationships. So so I'm just gonna play that, and that'll just give you a sort of a fundamental, I think, really it's about 5 minutes long, to sort of see the trauma-informed explained in fairly simple ways.
Okay. On va vous partager un petit vidéo qui va nous aider à comprendre. C'est en anglais, par exemple, mais on peut le retrouver sur YouTube et avoir les subtitles en français. Là.
Okay, hold on. I'm just going to share my screen again.
Merci, Patricia. Oui, déclenché. Triggered. I got to learn these terms in French.
Oh, right. Okay. There we go.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Today, I thought we would talk about the big question.
Okay. Does it sound okay? I just want to check. Yeah.
Yeah, the subtitles are in Swedish or.
Oh, wait a sec.
Yeah, it'd be great if we had them in French right now for anybody who's watching.
I mentioned little glitch.
Yeah, no worries.
Live makes it all interesting for us.
Yeah. Donc, si que. Ouais, on va le mettre en français si c'est possible.
Oh, I know how to do it. I did it earlier. Sorry, people.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. So if you're watching on the replay, si vous regardez sur tout à l'heure, si vous regardez pas nécessairement en direct, mais Si vous avez des questions par rapport au trauma ou n'importe quoi, envoyez-nous vos questions. Ça nous fera plaisir de vous aider avec ça. On essaie juste de trouver mettre ça en français. Well, that's okay.
What it really takes to become a trauma-informed organization.
Sorry, I just want to get this done. Damn, shoot.
That's all right. So English, and then I wonder if you click on that, can it go? Does it click through?
You know what? How about we play it?
And where the closed caption is the CC.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It doesn't.
I did it earlier, but for some reason it's Okay, well, why don't we play it, but we'll link it in with the French subtitles.
Yeah, we can link it underneath, and we can have the French subtitles in.
Yeah, and I apologize. Okay, you ready?
Oh, well, we're learning here, eh?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little, non-regulated.
You got it. You got it.
It's actually quite different from what other people say, because I think other people focus on what actions should be taken, what needs assessments need to be done, or what services need to be put in place. And for me, I think that the most important thing is the moment when a person is about to become trauma reactive, and how well everyone else can handle that situation without becoming trauma reactive themselves. Because what I've learned from doing interviews of offenders or students or anyone who uses these trauma organizations is that the most important thing that makes or breaks a person's day is actually the moment-to-moment interactions with people. And people as random as like the lunch lady in the cafeteria who will give you a full serving of food or not, just based on whether or not they like you and how they feel that day, or whether or not a safety officer will use excessive discipline just because they're frustrated with you. Those little moment-to-moment things are really what make people feel safe in an environment. And what I don't get is that the hospitality industry completely understands this. Every five-star hotel or five-star restaurant knows that service is the foundation upon which the whole experience rests. And so I really think that trauma-informed organizations need to take a hospitality mindset. And what hospitality means in a trauma-informed organization, I think, is that you're always being sensitive and attentive to the other person's needs and sensitive to their trauma reactiveness, and the fact that you yourself can be trauma reactive, and that you have to always guard against going to survival brain yourself, and to amp up as much as you can your ability to stay clear, to stay purpose-driven and goal-directed and emotionally attuned to the other people. Okay, so then the first step in learning how to do that is actually to understand what your own survival brain looks like. Now, for me, I know that when I get into survival brain, if I'm going into the aggressive mode, then I think people are stupid, that they have bad intentions, that they don't mean well, that they're only doing things to hurt other people. And then whenever I go into the withdrawal phase, I just want to give up on a project, give up on the people, think that they're never going to change. So when I realize that I'm in that alarm state, the first thing I do is just to slow things down as much as possible. Because I know that my body's been activated and I have adrenaline rushing through me and I'm feeling intense feelings. And there's no way that I can just snap out of it. I have to let my emotions and my body cool down on its own. So I have to have a lot of patience for myself. I also try to scan my body and get grounded in it again. And I try to take some deep belly breaths and take control of my breathing again. And the other really important thing to do is that I try not to get mad at myself for getting into that alarm state. Because I know that my alarm has only been activated because something really important to me is going on, or because I feel like something that I really care about is being threatened. And then once I do that, I try to figure out what page I'm on. And PAGE is an acronym that I just made up that I think captures the essence of how to de-escalate from an alarm state. And the first step of PAGE is to really remember what my purpose is. And by purpose, I mean my purpose in life and the kind of life I want to live and the values that I uphold. And then I try to remember how this moment can be a moment when I'm trying to live my purpose in life. And then the next thing I do is try to figure out whether I'm being emotionally attuned to the other person. Because as alarms go up, then self-absorption kicks up, and I'm only worried about how this person's trying to attack me and whether I'm getting my needs and opinions across. And so this really helps me to slow down and pay attention to what's going on in the other person. And the next thing I do is to ask, what is the goal or intention of our meeting, this interaction, or even this very moment or this conversational turn. And when you're in an alarm state, you forget what the goal is and all you care about is self-protection. But if you remember what your goal is, then that can help you to stay focused on what you really want to accomplish and what you want to say and do. And then finally, I ask myself, what am I really feeling? And oftentimes, the only things I can understand are the anger and frustration. So I have to dig a little deeper and ask, what is the hurt or the vulnerability that I'm feeling that I express to the other person because I'm feeling threatened? And then I try to reorient my stance to express that hurt and vulnerability and feel confident that that's the only way that I'm ever going to get anything accomplished. And what I really want to say is that being in this clear, calm, purpose-driven state of mind is incredibly difficult, and it takes hundreds and hundreds of hours of practice. I think of it like being in great cardiovascular shape if you're an athlete, because you can learn a lot of techniques for being trauma-informed, and that's like learning the actual skills of your game. But to actually be able to execute all those techniques, you have to be in great physical shape. And to do that, you have to run miles and miles every day, and you have to keep training, and you can never let that cardiovascular endurance slide, or else your game just suffers. So this is really the most foundational, most important thing that people need to learn to become a trauma-informed person, and then to help your organization become trauma-informed as well. Now, after you've done this for 100 hours of practice, then you can move on to some of the techniques that we'll go over in the next videos. Thank you.
All right. It's a great little video. Thanks for sharing.
I just want to make sure I don't start the next one. Turn that off. Okay, good. Yeah. So we just
saw a great little video because it really shows us that it starts with us as a parent, if we're going to translate it to that, not just the trauma-informed organization.
Yeah. And I think too what I have felt since I've become more aware about this is that this is really important when you're interacting with people who have significant trauma in their life, but it also works with all of us.
Yeah.
You know, like no matter what, like you don't have to have, in order to feel like, if you're reacting to someone who is having a difficult time, the more attuned you are to them, the more focused you are about what is my goal here, and then be aware of your feelings, you can be really effective with them, right?
Absolutely.
You can really help them through their process of what they need to go through.
Yeah, by understanding your own process and relating. It's like coming to that even place where you can relate to someone else and they feel validated in what they're going through.
Yeah, one of the things that we'll talk about with the webinar and some of the stuff happening this week is this idea of 3 R's, not to throw too many acronyms, but the idea, the 3 R's are regulate, relate, reason. And so the idea of that is that when someone's having a trauma reaction, a meltdown, like extreme behavior or reaction to something, that as the person caring for them, you want to regulate yourself, or you want to help, they're unregulated. You want to help them regulate themselves because they're in trauma mode. They're in terror. It's like the house has burned down and they need to get out of it. So they're reacting out of fear often is what they're, even though it's not an actual necessarily in their mind, it feels so fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So helping them regulate and then communicating with them that they can relate. You're expressing like, I know you're going through something difficult, I'm here for you, so that it's more about the relation part. The reason part would then be at a time when everyone's emotions are calmed down, to actually conversation about the behavior and reason with them about the behavior. So we often go straight to reason.
Yeah.
Stop doing that because you're going to hurt yourself. Stop doing that because it's not nice. Stop doing that because you're going to get kicked out of school, or whatever we do. We reason, but in reality, that when people are at that state, their brain is so much in a terror mode that they can't, that part of their brain is not being accessed, right? And I think we all totally can that a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I totally experienced this in my own, relationship with my children, and having them become, unregulated. And I've tried many times to reason right away, and that does not work. And sometimes it can, depending on where they are, like you say, like you explained.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can, but when we're talking about trauma, and it's quite different. Like you mentioned, being in that state of fear and stress and anxiety, and all they want right away is a way to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not about reasoning.
And because the kids were, a lot of the kids that we're talking about have had really, really extremely difficult early experiences, their trauma reaction is, times 10, times 100, times a million. So the same fear, the same reaction to a situation is going to be more extreme often.
Mm-hmm.
And their sense of safety is going to be they creating the sense of safety. I love how you use that language. How do you create a sense of safety? And you help them regulate, they relate. It's sort of like how we treat babies,
Mm-hmm.
We don't expect a baby to stop crying because it doesn't make sense for them to stop crying. Right?
No, that's it. Yeah.
You help them regulate by rocking. You let them know you love them. And that's what we all, that's the point where people's brains are at when they're feeling traumatized.
Yeah, very, very fundamental. And I like that the man in the video, lets us know, like, let's not kid ourselves. It's very difficult. It can be difficult to do. It takes practice, and it takes consistency, and it takes self-compassion, because we might not get this right away, or we're trying, and then, oops, we get triggered, and then it all goes bananas. And how can we have self-compassion and self-empathy for ourselves as parents, trying to navigate this relationship with a child who has been through a very difficult time that he may or may not even remember? And then we go like, why is this happening? And it's just a lot. It takes a lot of love, and a lot of time, and a lot of practice, and a lot of compassion.
Yeah. And a lot of what happened to the kids happened really early, like prenatally, as infants. So it's a very, very important time where their brain was developing. So therefore, their brain has developed in a way to keep themselves safe, right? Mm-hmm. So therefore, their reactions are going to be a little more extreme, probably, right?
Absolument. Fait que je veux juste dire vite fait en français, c'est ça, suite à la vidéo qu'on vient juste de regarder, que excusez-nous pour avoir les captions en français, mais comme vous pouvez aller voir la vidéo, le mettre en français, on fait juste discuter un peu du vidéo ce matin, puis de dire que, regarde, c'est pas évident, il nous suggère une façon de regarder à ça, puis il nous rappelle que c'est difficile, puis ça prend beaucoup de pratique, puis beaucoup d'empathie, puis beaucoup de compréhension pour l'enfant qui passe à travers de ça, mais pour nous-mêmes aussi, de pouvoir naviguer ça, cette relation-là avec nos enfants dans les états difficiles.
And one of the things before we finish up too is that this doesn't work if you're not regulated, right? If you're not feeling okay. So I think we as parents often feel, we always need to be giving, we always need to be there for our kids, which we do. But in order to do that, just like Brandi's been saying every Monday morning at 10 a.m. in our group, and we try to reinforce, is that figuring out a way to be well, like if you're feeling like things are spiraling with your child and with yourself, that taking that time, as hard as it is, like trying to figure out a way within your life circumstances to find ways to be well yourself, because the trauma-informed approaches will not work unless you're regulated.
Well, that's it. And that's what we're really coming to terms with, and really starting to understand that this idea of self-care is not this term we're just throwing around to, like, go take a bubble bath, which is great. I do that all the time. But I mean, we want to move beyond that in ways that serve you and that nurture you and that regulate you. And that may look very, very different from your neighbor or your sister or your other parents that you know. And it's not this idea that it's self-care is about, doing everything I do or doing everything Suzanne does, or, this idea of really figuring out what works for you so that you feel regulated, so that when you show up for your child, that you're in this state where you can have these tools actually work. So we're going to dive, just to finish up with that, like, and you can finish up for trauma. And we're in this week of trauma informed this week, but we are going to really touch base on self-care next week. And we called it Beyond Self-Care, because we're going to dive deep in what that can mean for you and give you some concrete ideas, to really be able to regulate yourself through it all. Because we all know it's not easy.
And we were really thoughtful. I think that we took time to think about what's the order of these topics, right? And that we're in, this week is all about, okay, getting an idea of what the strategies are, seeing how people use them, so, that, but really it is fundamentally about self-care and your wellness, and how that is contagious, and how it affects how you're able to then help your kids. And then next week will be, okay, how do I actually do that?
Yeah, how I actually do that, and modeling that. The fact that we are modeling self-care too, once we start practicing it and incorporating into our everyday as rituals, as routines. Don't you be mistaken, your kids see you do this. Just like they hear and see you do everything else, they see you do this. And what a great way to model taking care of yourself, how important it is for your well-being, like you say. So I just want to say that quickly in French. Fait que cette semaine, c'est tout sur le traumatisme, puis des outils pour pouvoir vraiment vous aider avec, que vous pouvez implémenter dans votre vie. Puis on va transitionner à la partie de prendre soin de soi la semaine prochaine pour pouvoir vraiment cette idée de lorsque nous sommes régularisés, puis qu'on prend soin de notre propre bien-être, qu'on va vraiment être capable de vraiment être là pour notre famille puis nos enfants. On va discuter ça la semaine prochaine.
And I want to just say, like one of the things, it's overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, now I have to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
But talking with families who are, trying to apply this, it can be life-changing. Like, it's not like all of a sudden everything's great and everybody's totally healthy and there are no crazy days. There's always crazy. It's going to be crazy, but the way in which you cope with those crazy days changes.
Exactly.
And it does affect kids. It's very well thought out. It's not just one person's idea. It's based on science. It's based on integrating a whole bunch of different approaches. You can see overlap with other, a lot of the self-care movement, and then some of the brain research movement and some of the parenting movement and compassion and understanding. So it's pretty significant. And it's one of those things that's, it's probably not easy completely to make a shift, but it can be very self-reinforcing quickly.
Absolutely.
Like, you see it, like when you feel heard and validated, when you're having a difficult time emotionally, think of how that feels.
Absolutely.
Remember how you feel when someone's done it to you. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. So
it is. And it's this idea, I think, of not thinking that it's the shift. The shift happens through a process, through a path, through really giving yourself time. But how, like this idea of using this approach of empowerment and empowering yourself and ways that work for you, so that you can also work in that empowerment state to know that you do have what it takes to do the shift and know that we're all practicing it together, especially in our beautiful, beautiful, diverse community in adoption.
And there's probably a bunch of things that, you know, that you're doing, like a lot of adoptive parents, or, you know, just people, you know, and, you know, anyone listening, there's probably a lot of the stuff that you just do naturally because you're just a compassionate, caring, sensitive person. And you're already doing it, and now it's got a label, you know. But you know, thinking into it and learning more about it, it's like, oh, that's what I was doing. And that's why that didn't escalate. That's why that went so, that's why somebody felt soothed and understood.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Suzanne, that there's probably so many good things you're already doing. So let's highlight those as well. And please share them in our community, because the more we can share what works for us, doesn't mean that it'll be exactly that for the next family to come. The thing is that we can rework it in a way that truly works for us and our families, because you know what? You're the one who knows your kids the best. So trust yourself through this process.
Okay. So do we need to go now?
I think so. I think we gave the information we wanted this week. Like Suzanne mentioned, check out our website. So many great resources there. All along the week, it will be trauma informed. Ça va vraiment être sur le traumatisme puis la parentalité avec le traumatisme, puis vraiment regarder à tout ce qui va être là pour vous cette semaine.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Brandi.